is Inside the CMS Studio with me, Chris Akin, and that, of course, was the Babies back on my feet again. And here's a guy that brought the Babies back on their feet again. It is one of the original members of the Babies. It is guitarist Wally Stocker. Wally, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you doing?
Excellent. Cannot complain. Well, Wally, gotta say, very happy to see that the Babies are back out again and touring. Obviously it's not new. It's, you guys have been doing it for a couple of years, or for a few years now, 3-4 years at this point, right?
Yeah, I think we're going into our fourth year now.
Okay, excellent. Now, are you surprised that there are people like me that were unaware? Now, as a big fan of the Babies back in the day, I was unaware until very recently that you guys were back. Are you surprised that it's taking, a little while for people to rediscover the band?
Yeah, I guess in a way. We kind of, being away that long, coming back with a new lineup and, a new CD. I guess it's taken a while, probably longer than we thought, but, it's just a question of getting out there and playing and getting the name back out there. And, it would have been nice to had it taken off a little earlier, but, things are starting to move and, we're having fun with it. So, you got to sort of let it take its course,
Sure.
You can't really force it on people. So, we're getting all of our, fans back from, 30 years ago, plus, a new generation of fans, kids that grew up in the house where their parents were playing Babies records and, turned their kids onto us. And so now we find ourselves playing to like two generations of Babies fans when we're out there doing shows,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, Wally, maybe you can help me solve this, or maybe you won't get this as much as I don't get this, but, I'm 47 years old, so my heyday of music was 78 to current, but I mean, my favorite time would have been like 78 to about 1990 is probably my favorite window. And that's sort of when you guys were in there as well, and that's certainly when you had your biggest hits.
Yes.
But you guys did not. It doesn't seem like the Babies. I mean, people certainly, they remember, every time I think of you and Isn't the Time, and they remember the songs, but it's not like you guys got the Pink Floyd treatment from classic rock radio either, where classic rock, they picked 20 bands and yours wasn't one of them. Why do you think it is that classic rock stations, did not gravitate to the Babies, especially when you guys had so much success there for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah. I don't really know, because there is a harder side to the band, other than songs like Isn't It Time and Every Time I Think of You, there's some more sort of aggressive side to the band, and always has been, as far as, being a rock band.
Right.
We just, we recorded those songs because we not only liked the songs, but we liked experimenting with strings and horns and things like that. Female singers, and it was a real sort of it wasn't tunnel vision by any means. We were open to anything. If it sounded good on the track, then we would put it in. And I think with those songs, maybe classic rocks kind of thought of us as a sort of more of a pop band, sort of walking that edge between sort of commercial pop and sort of commercial classic rock. And,
right.
By the time we got to the third album and we had Head First out, I think, classic rock stations were kind of picking up on that, and then later on with Midnight Rendezvous and Back on My Feet, and then I think they started to realize that, you know, we sort of did fit into that sort of classic rock scene, you know?
Sure, definitely. Now, Wally, let me ask you, and this is only because this is as fresh in my mind as it could possibly be. Last night, for whatever reason, I sat down in front of Netflix and I watched the Eagles documentary, which I don't know if you've seen or not, but it's this amazing look at one of the biggest bands in the history of the world, and how even with all the success in the world that they had, they still imploded. And it was amazing to watch how much they really kind of were not having fun, even though they were wildly successful at the end. Now, I don't know the circumstances behind the Babies breakup, and you don't need to go into all that because that's obviously way old history. But I'm curious for you if it was a similar type of a thing where the success did not outweigh the individual problems within the band, which is why you moved on.
Well, you know, being in a band is like, you know, being married. It's
right.
You know, you have your ups and downs and, you know, disagreements and, you know, it's, but that's something that all bands go through. You know, I couldn't name one band that hasn't had problems through their careers, you know, but, you know, I think there was, you know, some turmoil by the time we got to, you know, the fourth album, and actually when we were making the fifth album, On the Edge, I could sense that you know, there was some restless goings on, if you like, in the band, and some, you know, some people with some other ideas, and, you know, and sometimes it's just so hard to keep all that together and try and create new music together when, you know, not everybody is on the same page. And unfortunately, you know, that happened to us. I think had we continued on to make another record after On the Edge, I think it may have taken us over the edge, you know. Right. I think we were one record away from really, you know, sort of, like I say, you know, reaching, you know, the final goal that we were really aiming for from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it was kind of cut short, you know. And when it was all over, I felt kind of so empty. You know, we were almost there, and you know, certain how should I say? You know, just people wanting to take different paths with their musical career, and you know. So it kind of all just sort of faded away and dissolved, and, you know, everybody moved on to other things, but it was a shame because, you know, that was our band, and you know, it was our music, and you know, it was something that we created out of nothing, and it was a real shame to see it all just kind of disappear like that, you know.
Certainly. Well, moving forward to today, because obviously that period went away, and you did a lot of other cool stuff as well with Rod Stewart and Air Supply and a bunch of other bands. So it's not like you sat home on your couch for 30 years. You've been, you know, you've stayed busy and stayed in bigger bands. What was it that came about 3-4 years ago at this point where you were like, you know what, maybe it's time to put this back together again and see what could happen?
Yeah. Yeah, after the babies split up, I continued, actually I was in the Rod Stewart band, and of course Tony Brock was in that band too, so him and I sort of, got to play together again for a little while I was in that band, and then I joined, I did a North American tour with Rod, and we did an album and a live album. And then Rod was changing his lineup, and so I started looking for something else, and ended up with Air Supply, who were they were going out on tour. They were going to the Far East, like Japan and Hong Kong, and so I joined Air Supply thinking that I was just going to be doing that tour, just as like a hired gun, if you like.
Sure.
And ended up being with them for like 3 years. And then I was in Humble Pie. Jerry Shirley put Humble Pie back together again with myself and Charlie Hewen, who's now the lead singer in Foghat. And we did, about 2.5, maybe 3 years with Humble Pie, and then I was, I wasn't doing anything for a while. I was doing some sessions and things like that, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I ended up moving to Florida, and but Tony and I would keep in touch, we've always kept in touch, and I guess, probably like 5 years ago now, he called me up one day and said, listen, I'm thinking about, maybe, John Waite doesn't want to do it, and because we had asked John a number of times whether he would be interested in, sort of getting back together again, on a sort of trial basis and see how it goes. And, he would always say, well, I'm happy doing my own thing, and I don't think I really want to get involved in a band situation again. So, we had to respect that. And so after a number of tries to try and convince him to maybe change his mind, like I say, Tony called me and he said, would you be interested in, us looking for a replacement for John Waite, and, maybe have another shot at it and put the band back together. And he said to me, I'm not going to do it unless you're fully committed, like 100%. He said, if you're not interested, he said, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to do it without you. So I said, well, yeah, I'm in. I'm in 100%. I'm fully committed if we can find the right singer,
Sure.
So, of course, Tony was in L.A., and I was in Florida, so he started to audition singers, and went through a number of singers, and kept sending me tapes and videos of these different singers, and then he called me and he said, I think I may have found the right guy, and I'm sending you, because what he had all these singers in his studio, and he was just playing the tracks and having them sing on, like Isn't It Time and Head First and things like that. So he told me it was John Bisaha and sent me all the details and the video, and I called him up and I said, I think we might be onto a winner here,
right,
with John. And they said, well, I'm going to bring him back a couple more times, and that's what happened. We were both really you know, because without that, there really wasn't any point in pursuing it, you know, if we couldn't find the right singer. And John was a fan from the old days anyway, which was really kind of exciting for us because, you know, he kind of knew the material and was a fan of the band, as opposed to a singer just coming in and going, well, you know, I'll sing for you, and, you know, what's in it for me kind of thing.
Right,
you know, John really had the passion for the songs and for the band, and so, you know, that's how we basically settled on John. And, you know, to this day, I know that we made the right decision.
Sure. Was it instant, or let me rephrase this. How important was it getting to know him as a person versus just singing the songs? Clearly anybody with YouTube can find out that John Bisaha can sing the baby songs as well as John Waite ever did. You know, he's just talented. But
yes.
But all the talent in the world does not make a good bandmate, you know, and I have to think that when you go back and reform a band that's been broken up for a long time, such as the Babies were, that knowing that this guy was going to be a good guy might even have been more important than being able to sing note for note the old stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree on that. And he does, you know, he has the personality, and he's just, you know, he's one of the boys. He's you know, he's like, he's just so excited to be doing this, and but he's also a very good friend. You know, he's not just the singer in the band. He's like part of the family now, and you know, his character, you know, is very high, and you know, it's just a pleasure to be around, you know, as opposed to being around somebody who maybe can sing really, really good, and, you know, and pull it off as far as vocals, but, you know, off stage, maybe doesn't quite have the personality and the friendship to go with it, you know. Mm-hmm. But John does, and that was also, you know, one of the reasons that we chose him was, you know, that he is, you know, he feels like part of the family, and, you know, although I've only known him now for, you know, these 4 years, I feel like I've always known him, you know.
Right. Certainly.